She was staring at the viewport again, lips moving silently, like she was talking to someone we couldn't see. I told her we had to ascend. She nodded once, slow, distracted, and whispered, "Soon." That word made my skin crawl. Patel had stopped working entirely. He just sat there, breathing heavy, eyes fixed on the metal floor. Every now and then, he'd whisper numbers under his breath, depth readings that didn't match ours. 7,000. 7,200. We weren't anywhere near that. I tried shaking him, but he just looked up at me, his eyes glassy and distant. "You don't remember it, do you?" he said. "What?" "The blackout," he whispered. "We didn't just lose power, we left," Dalton cursed, slammed his wrench down. "He's delirious. We're losing oxygen, that's all." But even Dalton couldn't explain what happened next. The temperature dropped, just a few degrees at first, then sharply. Our breath misted in the air. The glass of the viewport frosted over. Mira's voice came through the dark. "Don't look outside," which of course made me look. Something drifted past the window, not swimming, floating. It was pale, with no real shape, like fabric moving underwater. But as it turned, I saw what looked like a face, empty sockets, no mouth. Then it vanished. Dalton was muttering prayers now, his voice shaking. Mira grabbed the control lever. "We're surfacing," she said, and shoved it forward. The sub didn't move. The gauges didn't change. It was like the ocean had us in its fist and wouldn't let go. Then a sound came through the intercom, like someone dragging metal across metal. It built until it was all we could hear, and underneath it, a whisper. "Liam." Not through the speakers this time, from behind me. I spun, flashlight shaking in my hand. Nothing, just shadows stretching across the curved walls. Mira's voice snapped through the dark. "Stay at your post." But the whisper came again, clearer now. "Liam, you shouldn't have followed her." I stumbled back, knocking into Dalton. He grabbed me, furious. "Who are you talking to?" I couldn't answer because I wasn't sure anymore. The hum returned, deep, resonant, vibrating through the soles of my boots. The instruments came alive, dials spinning wildly. One of the pressure gauges burst, spraying mist into the cabin. Mira shouted for everyone to secure their stations, but her voice sounded distant, hollow, like it was echoing from another room. Dalton lunged toward the power conduit, trying to stabilize it, and the lights cut out again. In the dark, we heard the unmistakable sound of breathing. Not ours. Heavy, ragged, too close. "Who's there?" I whispered. Silence. Then a voice that wasn't a voice, more like a thought crawling through the skull. "You brought it with you." I couldn't breathe. I felt something cold brush against the back of my neck. I turned and saw the faintest reflection of movement on the console screen. A silhouette standing behind me, though I was alone. When the lights flickered back, Patel was gone. His chair spun slowly, empty. Dalton lost it. He grabbed the emergency flare gun, aiming it at the hatch. "We're opening it," he said, eyes wild. "We can't stay in here," Mira shouted. "You'll kill us all!" He didn't listen. He fired. The flare hit the bulkhead, exploding in blinding red light. The entire cabin bathed in crimson as smoke filled the air. I could see every terrified face, Mira's, mine, even Patel's. Yes, Patel's. He was outside the viewport. His face was pale and distorted, pressed against the glass, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. Dalton dropped the flare gun. "That's not possible," he whispered. Patel lifted his hand and pressed it against the glass. Just like the print from before, only this time his palm started to sink through it, like the barrier wasn't solid anymore. The metal rippled under his touch. Mira screamed at me to shut everything down. I tried. The controls wouldn't respond. The hum turned to a roar, filling every nerve in my body until I thought my head would split. Then, silence again. When I opened my eyes, Dalton was gone too. Only his headset lay on the floor, still whispering static that somehow shaped my name. Mira was the only one left. She stood by the viewport, whispering to it like it was alive. "It's showing us the way back," she said softly. "Don't you see? We're already rising." I looked at the depth gauge. It read 0. But we weren't moving. Outside the viewport, darkness churned. For a moment I saw faint shapes swirling, like reflections, but they were upside down. Our faces, staring back at us, mouthing words we couldn't hear. Then Mira smiled. "We've surfaced," she said. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. But when I looked closer, the glass wasn't reflecting anymore. It was a window, and on the other side, I swear I saw sky. Black sky, and something moving in it. The first thing I felt was stillness. Not calm stillness, like the ocean had stopped breathing. The gauges said we'd surfaced, but everything inside the sub felt weightless. No roll of water, no current, no sound. Mira stood at the viewport, her hand pressed to the glass. "We made it," she whispered. "Do you see it, Liam?" I wanted to answer her, but my throat locked up. Because what I saw outside wasn't the surface. It looked like sky, sure, dark, cloudless. But there was something off about the way it moved. The stars shimmered like they were underwater, rippling and bending whenever I blinked. Dalton and Patel were gone. I kept telling myself maybe they'd gone to the lower deck. Maybe they were fine, but the silence told me otherwise. The only sound was the faint crackle of the intercom, whispering static that almost sounded like breathing. Mira was smiling now. That was wrong too. She hadn't smiled once since launch. "We're back," she said, still facing the glass. They answered. "Who?" I asked. She turned to me and I swear her pupils had thinned. Narrow slits, reflecting the red emergency light. "The ones who called us down here." Her voice was soft, reverent, like a believer at prayer. I took a step back. "We need to contact Argos. They'll send recovery. They can't reach us," she said simply. "They never could." Then she pointed at the console. "Check it." The comms panel was alive again. The signal light pulsed steady green. For the first time in hours, I heard a voice cutting through the static, calm, human. "Erebus, this is surface control. We've got your signal. Copy?" Relief surged through me. I nearly laughed. "Control! This is Technician Liam Crane. We've... Stop!" Mira's voice was sharp. "Don't talk to it." "What are you talking about?" Her smile widened. "That's not them." The voice repeated itself. "Erebus, do you copy?" But this time it wasn't calm. It was identical to my own voice. I froze. "Liam," it said through the static, "you're not supposed to be there." Mira's hand slammed down on the console, killing the transmission. The cabin plunged back into silence. I stared at her, trying to understand, but she just shook her head. It mimics what it knows. It's trying to keep you calm. I laughed, nervous, thin. "You're losing it, Captain." "Maybe," she said, "but I'm still right." She went to the hatch and began unsealing it. I lunged forward, grabbing her arm. "What are you doing?" "It's safe now," she said. "We've reached them." I glanced at the depth gauge again. 0. But the sonar still showed movement. Slow, rhythmic pulses below the hull, like something circling. "Mira, listen to me," I said. "We're not on the surface. None of this makes sense. Just stop." Her hand froze on the release wheel. She looked at me for a long time, then whispered, "You still don't remember, do you?" I didn't answer. She smiled sadly. We didn't descend, Liam. We were pulled. The hatch mechanism clicked. Cold air rushed in. Not salt water, not ocean air, just cold, empty nothing. The lights flickered. The entire sub shuddered like it was breathing again. Something beyond the hatch was glowing. Soft blue, the same light we'd seen in the deep. Mira stepped closer, almost entranced. I grabbed her wrist, but her skin felt strange. Too smooth, too cold. She turned, and for the briefest moment, her reflection in the viewport didn't match her movement. I let go. She stepped through the hatch and vanished into the blue light. No splash, no scream, just gone. The door swung shut on its own. I stood there, shaking, staring at the metal, waiting for something to happen. Then, slowly, the control lights came back on. Systems rebooting, oxygen levels steady, power restored. For a moment, everything looked normal. Too normal. The sonar pinged once. A faint return signal. Something just beneath us. I leaned in. The outline looked like a sub. Same shape, same dimensions. Argos. I whispered. The reflection grew clearer. Not Argos. It was Erebus, our own vessel. A second Erebus rising slowly from the dark below. My headset crackled. Mira's voice, impossible, quiet, calm. Welcome back to the surface, Liam. I spun toward the hatch. It was sealed. The glass fogged over again, frost crawling in thin veins across its surface. I wiped it away with my sleeve and froze. Outside, through the distortion, I saw her, Mira, standing upright in the sky, her hair floating around her face like she was underwater. She smiled and lifted her hand. Her lips moved silently. Come out. Every alarm in the cabin blared at once. The sonar screamed, gauges spinning into chaos. The second Erebus below began rising faster, the shape growing larger, its lights flickering in sync with ours. Then, through the intercom, Mira's voice again. Soft, echoing. Don't fight it. You're already home. The glass of the viewport bowed inward, flexing under invisible pressure. The air vibrated with a low, wet hum. I could feel it in my teeth. My head pounded. The sonar flared one final time, displaying a single word written in static across the screen. Surfaced. I should have felt relief. Instead, my stomach turned to ice, because beneath the word, faint and flickering, I saw another message forming, almost hidden by the static, like something whispering from below. You never left. The lights snapped off, the hum faded, and in that black, weightless silence, something knocked on the hull. Once, twice, 3 times. The knocking hasn't stopped since. Sometimes it's slow, patient, like it's waiting for me to answer. Other times it's frantic, shaking the whole hull as if something wants in, or maybe something wants out. You asked how I survived. That's the thing. I don't remember surviving. I just woke up here, lights flickering, air thick with condensation, the hum in the walls like a heartbeat I can't silence. The instruments say we're at 0 depth, surface level, but the windows, if that's what they are now, show nothing but black water pressing against the glass. No, not water. It moves wrong, too slow, too alive. Mira's gone, Dalton. Patel, gone. But I hear them sometimes, through the comms, whispering words that aren't words. Sometimes the voices sound like mine, overlapping, echoing, asking questions I don't want to answer. I keep recording because I think someone will find this. That's what this is. My log, my confession, my proof. If this ever reaches the surface, maybe they'll understand what happened down here. Or maybe they'll seal this recording away, just like they did the others. Yeah, I found them. When the emergency lights flicked on an hour ago, At least. I think it's been an hour. I noticed scratches on the wall behind the navigation console, names carved deep into the metal, layers of them, like others had been here before us. I counted 7 names, all dated decades apart, all missions that were supposedly lost at sea. And below those names, fresh, wet, carved like it was done recently, was mine. Liam Crane. I don't remember doing that. The hum changed after I saw it. It started syncing with my heartbeat again, only not exactly. It would lag behind, then jump ahead, like something was listening, adjusting, learning. I tried turning off the systems, but nothing responds. Power keeps running. The oxygen doesn't deplete. It's as if Erebus is keeping me alive, or pretending to. I think about Mira, about how calm she looked before she stepped into that blue light. Maybe she knew. Maybe this was the plan all along, to feed it, because that's what it feels like now. Like something's feeding. The comms flare to life every so often, just static at first. Then her voice, Liam, always the same tone, always the same pause. "You're almost there," I used to answer her. Not anymore. Every time I did, the knocking would start again, louder, closer. Once, I heard the hatch locks groan like they were being tested from the outside. But here's the worst part. The recordings. I replayed the camera feed earlier, just to check the logs. On screen, I saw myself sitting right here, exactly as I am now. Same position, same expression, but behind me, something moved. A shadow, thin and long, gliding along the curve of the hull. When I turned in the footage, the shadow turned too, like it was mimicking me. I watched that recording 5 times. Each time it lingered longer behind me. Now the cameras are off. I didn't touch them. I tried the hatch earlier, thinking maybe we had surfaced. The handle moved easy, too easy. When I cracked it open, no water poured in, just cold air. Saltless, weightless. I shone my flashlight out. There was no surface, no deck, no horizon, just an expanse of black, endless and shifting, like ink that breathed. And then, fingers, pale, translucent fingers gripping the edge of the hatch from the outside. I slammed it shut. The metal burned cold where I touched it. The air's different now. Heavy. Wet. I can see my breath, even though the temperature gauge reads normal. Every few minutes, the whole sub tilts slightly, like something enormous is brushing against it. I've stopped trying to make sense of time. The clock on the wall says we launched 12 hours ago. The internal log says it's been 3 days. My body says longer. Sometimes I hear footsteps in the corridor, soft, deliberate, too slow to be human. Once, I called out. The steps stopped right outside the control room door. I waited, barely breathing, until a voice, my own voice, whispered through the crack. "You shouldn't have come up. I don't go near that door anymore. I'm trying to piece it together. To remember what happened after the blackout. I think Mira was right. We didn't surface. We inverted. Everything flipped. We went somewhere else that looks like the surface but isn't. A reflection maybe. A trap. I think Erebus isn't a vessel anymore. It's an echo chamber. Something built to record and replay what it consumes. The scratching's louder again. Coming from under the floor this time. I can see the panels vibrating. Hold on. Brief distortion. Something's moving outside the viewport again, closer than before. There's light coming from it now, a deep blue glow, like a heartbeat pulsing through liquid. Mira's face appears in it, smiling, calm. Her lips move, forming words I can't hear. Then her eyes roll back, and I see myself reflected inside her pupils, staring out from behind the glass. The comms click on by themselves. My voice comes through. This is technician Liam Crane transmitting from Erebus. The mission is complete. We have resurfaced. I didn't say that. The recording repeats, looping, distorting. Each time it plays, my reflection in the viewport blinks out of sync with me. The hum deepens. The air vibrates. My chest feels too tight. There's something in my lungs. Liquid? No, light. I think it's breathing through me. If anyone ever finds this log, don't come looking. Don't send rescue. Erebus isn't a sub anymore. It's a door, and it's still open. The knocking starts again. Slow, measured. The glass trembles. 1, 2, 3. It stops. Then, from behind me, quiet, close, familiar. Liam. I turn toward the voice, heart pounding. It's not Mira, it's me. Story number 1. You ever see ice breathe? Not crack, not shift, but breathe, like lungs under glass. That's what we saw that night at the frozen sea. But if I'm being honest, it wasn't the ice that scared me. It was the fact that I recognized what was trapped inside it, and it looked exactly like me. You ever seen ice breathe? I mean really, rise and fall like a chest under a blanket. That's what I saw the night we got to the frozen sea. Or maybe it was morning. I keep mixing that part up. Anyway, Mara said it was just the wind, but the wind doesn't have a heartbeat. We'd driven 12 hours north. No music, barely any talking. Just the sound of the tires biting the snow. The GPS stopped working 3 hours before we got there. I remember her voice saying, "Turn left at the radio tower." But when I looked out the window, there was no tower, just a single flicker of red light on the horizon that kept blinking, like an eye opening and closing. The sign said, "Frozen sea, no access beyond this point." Mara laughed, kicked snow off her boots and said, "Perfect." That was her kind of humor, always finding safety in danger. Or maybe that was me. I don't remember who suggested the trip anymore. The cabin sat about a mile from the waterline. I filmed it on my phone, though the footage looks different now somehow. In the video, the sea is flat and white, calm. But I swear, when I stood there, the whole surface moved. Slow, rhythmic, like something underneath was trying to exhale. Mara said, "Elias, stop filming. You're shaking the camera." But I wasn't. My hands were steady. At least, I think they were. That first night, the generator died twice. The air inside the cabin felt heavy, like it was soaked with humidity, which doesn't make sense. It was -20 outside. Mara kept complaining about hearing water drip, even though everything was frozen solid. I told her it was in her head. Then I heard it too, drip, drip, like something melting slowly, right beneath our feet. I tried not to mention it on camera. I didn't want to sound paranoid, but I could feel something wrong beneath the floorboards. It was as if the ice wasn't just shifting. It was breathing with us, waiting for our rhythm to match. The next morning, we walked to the shoreline. The snow was unbroken, except for a long line of shallow dents leading from the cabin to the sea. Footprints, but too wide to be human. They curved, then stopped at the water's edge. "Tracks from a sled," Mara said, brushing snow from her hood. "Whose sled?" I asked. She shrugged. "Maybe yours." I didn't argue, but I didn't own a sled. We reached the sea just as the light changed. I could see every crack stretching for miles, thin veins of blue under the surface. The sound, the groaning, was low and deep, like the earth itself trying to remember how to breathe. Then it happened. The ice lifted. I'm not exaggerating. It swelled like something was pushing from below. The surface bulged upward, maybe a few inches, maybe more. I stumbled back. Mara laughed, actually laughed, and said, "It's just air, Elias. Relax." But I swear, I saw something beneath the layer, something pale and smooth, a shape that mirrored mine. arms spread wide against the underside of the ice, like it was looking up at me. I called Mara's name, but she'd already started walking back toward the cabin, or at least I thought she did. When I turned to follow, there were no footprints beside mine. That night, I checked the camera. The footage glitched every few seconds. I paused at one frame, just before the ice moved. There, under the surface, was a blur shaped like a face. My face. I didn't tell Mara. She was already upset about the cold and the noise. She said I'd been talking in my sleep again. I don't remember sleeping at all. When I went outside later to clear the snow off the generator, I saw her reflection in the window, even though she was standing right behind me. "Did you see it move?" I asked her quietly. She frowned. "See what?" "The ice," I said. She blinked slowly. "Elias, we haven't been near the water yet." Her voice was calm, patient, like she was talking to a child. And that's when I realized she might be right. Maybe we hadn't gone to the water yet. Maybe that memory came later, or earlier. I don't know anymore. When I woke up the next morning, Mara was gone. The door was wide open, snow piled inside like someone had been standing there for hours. Her coat still hung on the hook. Her boots were missing. I called her name until my throat burned. The only sound that answered was the slow, deep groan from the sea. I followed it. The path to the shore was covered in new footprints, mine and someone else's. They stopped at the same spot where the ice had moved before. I knelt down, brushing away the snow, and the moment my hand touched the surface, a vibration went through me. It was faint, like a heartbeat inside the ice. I leaned closer, whispering her name, and the reflection that looked back wasn't mine. It was hers, smiling, eyes open, lips moving silently under the frozen layer. I pressed my hand against hers. It was ice cold, but I swear, I felt it press back. I don't remember how long I stayed there. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. When I finally pulled away, there was a perfect handprint beside mine, pressed deep into the ice, still fresh, as if it had come from the other side. The camera cuts here in my footage. I didn't mean to stop recording, it just stopped. But if you slow it down, frame by frame, you'll see it. The surface flexing, lifting, like a lung filling with air. The ice was alive. And that's when I started hearing her voice again. But that's part of the next recording. I didn't sleep after that night. Not because I was scared, but because the ice wouldn't stop breathing. It started just before dawn. Every few minutes I'd hear that same sound outside. Low, heavy, like lungs filling and collapsing under a frozen sheet. The window panes trembled each time, dusting frost down the glass. I filmed it, of course. I filmed everything, but when I replayed the clip, there was nothing. No sound, no movement, just silence. That's when I realized the camera doesn't hear what I hear. Or maybe it refuses to. I told myself I'd find Mara once the light came up, but the light never really came up. It just shifted from black to a bruised kind of blue. The storm had closed in overnight, erasing our tracks. I remember standing at the door with her red scarf in my hand, telling the camera, "She's probably just gone to the truck." But when I turned the lens toward the driveway, the truck was gone. Except, later that same day, I filmed it again, still parked exactly where we left it. I don't remember that part changing. At first, I thought maybe she was playing a prank. Mara had a dark sense of humor. Once she locked herself in a walk-in freezer during a snowstorm just to make me panic. But this felt different. The silence was too deep, too patient. Around noon, if it was noon, I found her gloves by the shoreline. The wind had buried them halfway, fingers curled, frozen stiff as if reaching for something. I kept filming as I picked them up. When I turned the camera toward the ice, I saw movement again. not a ripple. A shape, something pale and long, was sliding just beneath the surface, moving slow, dragging itself towards shore. I whispered her name, Mara, because the shape looked almost human. I swear it did. Arms, legs, hair floating like dark weeds. Then it stopped, right beneath me. I pressed my palm against the ice, and the ice pressed back. There's a moment when fear gets so big, it doesn't even feel like fear anymore. It's just stillness. I remember holding my breath and realizing the thing beneath me was doing the same. It was matching me. That's when the first sound came, a deep, guttural scrape, like someone dragging their nails across a frozen window. Then another, softer one, almost like whispering. I leaned closer. The whispering grew louder. It was my name. Over and over, Elias, Elias. I ran back to the cabin, slammed the door, and locked it. Even though there was nothing human out there to turn a handle. I replayed the footage, shaking, hoping to hear the voice again, but the audio was silent. Only one word remained, faint, distorted, just before the video cut out. Stay. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? The nearest village was 50 miles away, and the radio kept spitting static. I found Mara's notebook on the table. She'd been sketching while I unpacked earlier that week. The last page showed the sea, perfectly still, but beneath it she'd drawn a pale face, mine, staring back. I don't remember her drawing that. The next part is hard to explain. I started hearing her voice inside the cabin, not from outside, from the walls, the floor, the air. Sometimes she'd whisper, "Help me." Other times she'd laugh. The same laugh she gave when she thought I was being dramatic. At one point, I found her coat draped over a chair. I don't remember bringing it in. When I touched it, the fabric was soaked, freezing cold, like it had just been pulled from water. I went back outside that night with the flashlight. The storm had stopped. Everything was so quiet that the beam seemed to hum. I walked to the same spot on the sea, my breath turning into clouds that disappeared instantly. There was a hole in the ice this time. Not large, just big enough for a person's hand to reach through. Around the edge, frost had melted into shapes that looked like fingers. I should have turned back. I should have gone home, but curiosity has its own kind of gravity. I dropped the flashlight into the hole. It sank a few feet before landing on something solid. Through the water, I could see a shape moving closer, like someone crawling up from below. I fell to my knees, trying to see. And then, eyes, wide open, staring up through the black water. Not Mara's, mine. I stumbled back, nearly falling into the hole. The ice cracked under my boots but didn't break. I remember screaming her name, begging her to answer, even though I didn't know which her I meant anymore. That's when I heard the breathing again, louder now, synchronized with mine as if the sea was copying me. I ran back to the cabin, slammed the door, and for the first time, prayed. I don't even believe in God. When I looked at the camera later, there was a new clip I don't remember recording. It showed me standing by the hole in the ice, whispering something to it. My lips were moving, but the audio was warped, slowed down. When I sped it up, it sounded like I was saying, "I'm sorry. I don't remember saying that. Maybe Mara's not missing. Maybe she's still here, just not above the ice anymore. Tomorrow I'm going back to look again. I have to know what's down there. I'll take the camera with me this time. If this is the last video I ever upload, then at least you'll know what's waiting under the ice. You ever look at your own reflection and see it blink before you do? That's when I knew the ice wasn't done with me. When I woke up that morning, the world outside looked wrong. Everything was too white, like the horizon had vanished and the sky had swallowed the ground. I don't remember falling asleep, but the camera was still recording, aimed at the window. The footage shows me talking in my sleep. I was whispering her name, over and over. Mara! But my lips didn't match the audio. I stepped outside. The air was heavy and dry like breathing glass dust. I followed the old footprints from the day before. Mine, I think. But they didn't lead to the sea this time. They led away from it. And every few steps, the snow would pulse beneath me, like something shifting underneath. When I reached the shoreline, the hole in the ice was gone, sealed over perfectly, as if it had never been there. But there was something new, a reflection. At first, I thought it was me. Same jacket, same hat, same breath cloud. But when I raised my hand, the reflection didn't move. It just stared back, eyes slightly wider than mine, mouth open. Then it smiled. Mara, I whispered. The reflection tilted its head, exactly the way she used to when she was pretending not to understand me. I pressed my hand to the ice, and a shudder went through the whole surface, rippling outward. That same slow breathing started again beneath my feet, like lungs waking up. Elias, the reflection mouthed. I fell backward, breath fogging the air. I swear I heard laughter echoing under the ice. I pulled the camera out of my pocket and pointed it down. Through the viewfinder, the reflection was gone. Just plain dead ice. But when I looked with my own eyes, it was still there, smiling. That's when I started talking to it. Not because I was crazy, but because silence felt worse. I told her I was sorry. I told her I didn't mean to let go. The reflection nodded slowly, like it understood. When I asked if she was still alive, her expression changed, like the smile froze halfway, stretched too wide. Then she whispered, clear as day, you brought me here. I ran back to the cabin shaking, snow clinging to my boots. My camera light flickered the whole way, catching flashes of movement in the trees, shadows bending in ways trees shouldn't bend. Inside, I barricaded the door, though I don't remember why. The audio recording from that night. I almost didn't play it, but curiosity always wins, doesn't it? The tape begins with static, then a woman's voice, soft and wet, like she's speaking through water. It's warmer down here, Elias. I froze. My voice comes next, answering her, calm, too calm. I know, except I don't remember ever saying that. Every time I played the clip, something new appeared behind her voice. Bubbles, creaking ice, a distant heartbeat. The pitch shifted, slowly aligning with my own breathing. That's when I realized what I was hearing wasn't a recording, it was live. I grabbed the lantern and went outside again. I told myself it was just to prove she was gone. That's all, but deep down, I hoped she'd answer. The sea looked calm under the lantern's glow. Too calm. The reflection waited for me again, closer this time. The ice thinner beneath her face. I knelt down and whispered, what do you want? Her mouth moved, but her voice came from behind me. You. I spun around. Nothing but snow and silence. When I turned back, the reflection had changed. It wasn't her anymore, it was me. Same jacket, same pale face, except the eyes were darker, black, like wet stone. The copy smiled and pressed its hand to the ice. I don't know why I did it, but I pressed mine against it too. The moment our palms met, the ice cracked in a spiderweb pattern. A wave of air escaped, sharp and cold, like a sigh. Then I felt it. Pressure, pushing upward. The ice began to swell again, breathing faster, louder. I stumbled back as a shape formed beneath the surface, rising until it pressed right against the layer between us. It was her, but not the way I remembered. Her hair floated like ink in water, her skin pale and stretched thin, eyes open too wide. She looked peaceful, like she'd been waiting. Elias, she said again, voice muffled through the frozen sheet. Come closer. I didn't want to. I swear I didn't. But my body moved on its own, drawn forward by something that felt like recognition or guilt. She raised her hand and pointed upward. For a second, I thought she wanted me to help her out. Then, I saw what she was pointing at. My reflection above her was gone. There was nothing staring back at me anymore, just black water and her pale face beneath it. I turned to run, but the surface beneath me cracked again. One long, deep sound that echoed through the still air like a scream. I barely made it back to the cabin before the ice split behind me. Inside, I checked the footage. Every single frame was clear, too clear, and in every one, her face was closer than it had been before. By the last clip, she wasn't under the ice anymore. She was standing beside me. I don't remember recording that. Now the breathing has stopped. The sea is silent, but sometimes, when I blink, I see her reflection staring from the dark corners of the window, lips still moving. I think she's waiting for me to come back. I think she wants to trade places, and maybe I already did. You ever look in the mirror and feel like the person staring back knows something you don't? Yeah, that's how it started. After that night, I stopped filming for a while. I couldn't. Every time I turned on the camera, my reflection in the lens would blink late, or not at all. I'd replay the footage, and it would lag just enough to make me doubt what was real. The sea outside had gone perfectly still. No cracks, no breathing, no sound. It should have felt peaceful. It didn't. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Then she came back. I don't mean the reflection. I mean Mara. She was standing by the cabin door when I woke up, wrapped in her red scarf. Snow dripped from her hair like she'd just come in from a storm. "Mara," I whispered. She didn't answer, just tilted her head, eyes fixed on me. Her lips were pale blue around the edges, but she smiled the way she used to. It was so gentle, too gentle. "You were gone," I said. "I looked for you." She nodded, slow and deliberate, and said, "You found me." Her voice sounded right, but something in the rhythm was wrong, like the pauses between words came half a second too late. When I reached out to touch her, her skin was freezing cold, slick with ice, but somehow she didn't shiver. I asked if she was hurt, but she just smiled again and said, "You brought me back." I don't remember doing that. She sat by the fire all day, staring into it like it was showing her something I couldn't see. I tried to record her, out of habit, I guess. But when I looked through the viewfinder, she wasn't there, just the empty chair, flames flickering through the air where she should have been. That's when the guilt hit me, full force. Maybe she really had drowned. Maybe this was what came back instead. That night, she spoke first. "Do you remember what you said before I fell?" she asked. I shook my head. I didn't remember her falling. I didn't remember a fight or shouting or anything. She smiled faintly. "You said, 'You can't leave me here,' and then you pushed." My throat closed. That's not true. But her eyes, those glassy, unblinking eyes, didn't change. "I slipped," I said. "You slipped." She tilted her head again. "You don't even know which one of us is telling the truth anymore." I couldn't take it. I ran outside into the freezing wind, gasping. The stars above looked smeared, warped, like the sky itself was melting. When I looked back at the cabin, I saw her through the window, sitting exactly as I left her, but behind her, in the reflection, stood me. Except I was smiling. The next morning, she was gone again, but her voice stayed. I heard it every time I breathed, every exhale forming her words. "You brought me back." I checked the camera again. There was new footage, hours long, of me sitting at the table, eyes open, unmoving, In the background, a woman's hand touched my shoulder, ice white, delicate. But when she leaned close to whisper something, the face that entered frame wasn't Mara's. It was mine. That's when I realized it. The reflection I'd seen wasn't copying me anymore. I was copying it. Every movement, every breath, every blink. The thing under the ice had learned me. It had worn my face before. It could wear hers too, and now it was wearing both. I tried to leave that night. I packed what I could, started the truck, but when I turned the headlights on, she was standing in front of it, perfectly still, frost crystallizing around her hair. "Let me go, Mara," I said. "Please." She smiled, too wide this time, and whispered, "We're already gone." The engine died. The lights went out. The temperature dropped instantly, frost crawling up the windshield from the inside. I screamed her name, but she was gone again. Back in the cabin, the mirrors were fogged over, but one of them cleared as I passed, revealing my reflection smiling before I did. My voice came from the glass. "Stay," it said. I smashed it with my fist. The moment it shattered, I heard something break outside, the sound of the ice splitting wide open. I ran to the door. Across the white expanse, a figure was walking toward me. Slow, careful, human. I thought it was Mara again. But when the light from the cabin hit its face, I realized it wasn't her. It was me. Same face, same coat, same camera strap slung over the shoulder. But this version of me wasn't breathing. Frost clung to his eyebrows and lips, and every step he took left no footprint behind. He stopped about 20 feet away, and when he spoke, his voice came from everywhere at once. "You shouldn't have looked under the ice." I stumbled back, shaking my head. "What are you?" he smiled. "I'm what came out." Then his eyes turned completely black, and he dissolved into mist, sinking back into the frozen surface. The wind howled so loud I dropped to my knees. For a moment, I thought the sea itself whispered something. Soft, broken words fading into the air. Trade complete. Now, when I look into any reflective surface, window, lens, even the frost on the walls, I see his face instead of mine. The copy, the one that came out. And each night the ice outside moves again. It's breathing faster, stronger, like it's waiting for something to finish thawing. I think it's waiting for me. The first sound I heard that morning wasn't the wind. It was breathing, slow, uneven, and behind me, I sat up too fast. The room spun, and for a second, I saw two versions of it. One bright with firelight, the other submerged in blue shadows. The air smelled like salt and rot. Impossible this far from the ocean. "Mara?" I whispered. No answer, just that breathing. I turned toward the sound. The chair by the window was empty, but the frost on the glass had shifted. Someone had drawn a handprint there. Long, thin fingers, pressed from the outside. That's when I noticed it. The ice on the pane wasn't frozen on the glass anymore. It was inside it, like veins spreading through transparent flesh. I backed away. The floorboards groaned as though something underneath was moving. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps. I froze. The door hinges trembled. A second set of knocks came from the opposite wall, perfectly in rhythm. Then the floor. Then the ceiling. The sound surrounded me. I grabbed the camera, some instinct, maybe to prove I wasn't losing my mind, and hit record. Through the lens, I saw the cabin the way it used to be, warm, intact, untouched by frost. But in the corner, barely visible, stood a figure with its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I didn't dare lower the camera, but when I finally did, the corner was empty. I turned to the window. He was there again. The copy, same coat, same face, but the eyes, those black, depthless pits, watched me with a kind of calm that wasn't human. His mouth opened, And though I couldn't hear his voice, the glass between us began to vibrate, spelling words in fog. "Let me in," I stepped back. "You're not me." The fog letters vanished, then reappeared. "You were never you." The lights flickered out. Something cold brushed past my neck. A hand, I think, and I dropped the camera. It kept recording, lying sideways, catching flashes of movement. 2 sets of legs, mine and mine. When the lights came back, there were footprints leading from the door to where I stood. Only one pair. I hadn't moved. I tried to leave again. The truck was buried under snow, and the sea, if it was even still a sea, had turned to glass. Perfectly clear, perfectly still. I could see shapes beneath it, things that looked like bodies, floating just below the surface, all of them wearing my face. Mara's voice came from the ice, faint but clear. "Don't let it in." I spun around. "Mara, where are you?" Her voice echoed again, further away this time. "You already did." A crack shot across the ice, long and deep, like the earth itself splitting open. Water began to bubble up through the fissure, steaming in the cold. And then something rose. At first, it looked like a shadow trapped under glass. Then it pushed through, stretching upward. A column of black water that twisted into a vaguely human form. Its surface rippled, reshaping itself, copying me perfectly. Every line of my face, every scar, every blink. But its mouth stayed wrong, too wide, the smile frozen halfway open. I ran. The cabin door slammed shut before I reached it. The windows fogged over again, sealing me in. The air temperature plummeted. My breath turned solid in the air. From somewhere inside the walls came a faint scraping, like fingernails on wood. Then a whisper. Right behind my ear, trade complete, I spun, swinging the fire poker through empty air. The sound came again, this time from the ceiling. I looked up and saw Mara's face pressed into the wood grain, her mouth open, frozen mid-scream. I fell backward, landing near the hearth. Flames roared suddenly bright, almost white, and for a moment I saw everything clearly. The cabin walls were pulsing, expanding and contracting, breathing with the rhythm of the sea. Something inside the fire was moving. Not burning, moving. I reached for the camera. Its viewfinder glitched. Lines of static forming shapes. Faces. Too many faces. My face. Mara's. All whispering the same words in unison. "We are the ice that moves." The walls cracked. Frost crawled over my hands. I could feel it sinking under my skin, cold threading through veins like ink in water. I stumbled toward the door. It opened before I touched it. Outside, the frozen sea had split wide open, a vast dark hole breathing mist into the sky, and from it, something crawled out. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It was pattern. My reflection multiplied and stitched together, limbs bending at wrong angles, eyes blinking in unison like a hive mind learning how to walk. It looked at me, then it smiled, the same too wide grin. "Mara," I whispered. "Run!" But there was no one left to hear me. The creature tilted its head, imitating mine. Then slowly it raised its hand, my hand, and pointed to the cabin door behind me. I turned. Standing there was Mara, her face pale, her hair dripping with black water. "You see it now," she said softly. "You see what came out." The creature let out a low, shuddering laugh, an echo made of 1,000 overlapping voices. I realized then it wasn't trying to kill me. It was trying to replace me, and maybe it already had. Because when I looked down at my own hands, they weren't hands anymore, just translucent ice, webbed with cracks, light flickering beneath the surface. The last thing I remember before the world went white was Mara whispering, "Welcome back." Story number 2. If you ever stop at mile marker 197 on Highway 19, don't order the coffee. I'm serious. It's not about the taste. It's about who makes it for you. I used to be the night shift waitress there before I realized the coffee isn't for people. It's for something else. I wasn't supposed to take the job. That's what the man at the gas station told me. Right before his eyes went dull, like he remembered something he wasn't supposed to. He said, "You're better off driving straight through the desert, miss. Don't stop at mile marker 197. I laughed it off. Back then, I laughed at everything that scared me. The desert stretched for miles, empty and aching. My gas gauge was sinking, and I hadn't slept in 30 hours. So when I saw the neon sign, Marlene's Diner, open 24 hours, glowing in the middle of nothing, it felt like a hallucination that decided to be kind. Inside, it smelled like burnt coffee and bleach, chrome stools, cracked vinyl booths, a jukebox that hadn't worked since Reagan was president. I remember thinking it looked like a movie set. Too perfect, too still. Marlene was behind the counter when I walked in. Heavy makeup, tired smile, hair piled up in a bun that hadn't moved in decades. She looked me over once and said, "You the new girl?" I told her I'd seen the hiring sign out front. She didn't ask for my name, just handed me an apron, a pad, and a single sentence that I didn't understand until much later. "Follow the rules, sweetheart. You'll do fine." I wanted to ask what she meant, but she'd already turned her back, wiping down the same spotless counter. The first night was quiet. A few truckers, a family with a crying kid, an old man who ordered pie but never touched it. By 2 a.m., the place was empty except for the hum of the ceiling fan and the desert wind pressing against the windows. I was refilling the sugar jars when I noticed something taped behind the register. A yellowing sheet of paper, handwritten in red marker. It said, "Diner rules. Don't look at the mirror after midnight. Never serve black coffee after 3 hours a.m. If someone asks for directions to exit 19, tell them it's closed. Don't touch the jukebox. Never, ever go out back alone." I remember laughing. Some local joke, I thought. Maybe a prank for the new hire. When I mentioned it to Marlene, she didn't laugh. Her face went blank. "Just follow them," she said quietly. "They keep us open." I didn't ask what that meant either. You learn not to in places like that. Around 3, the bell over the door jingled. I thought the diner was empty, but a man had come in without a sound. He wore a faded denim jacket and a trucker hat pulled low, like he didn't want to be seen. He sat at the counter, hands folded neatly in front of him. "What'll it be?" I asked. He smiled, small, polite. "Black coffee." It was exactly 3:02 a.m. I froze for a second. The words from the paper buzzed in my head like a gnat. I glanced at Marlene. She was in the kitchen, washing dishes, humming some off-key tune. I poured the coffee anyway. When I turned back to give it to him, he was gone, cup still steaming on the counter. The bell above the door hadn't rung. The stool was still spinning slightly, like he'd just left. I remember standing there holding my breath, staring at the untouched coffee until it went cold. When Marlene came out a minute later, she saw the cup and went pale. "What time was this poured?" 3:02, I said. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then she grabbed the cup, dumped it into the sink, and whispered something under her breath that sounded like a prayer. "Don't ever do that again," she said finally. "You don't serve coffee after 3. Her voice cracked on the last word. The next night, she made me memorize the rules. She even made me repeat them out loud, like a kid learning catechism. I thought it was ridiculous, but I did it anyway. There was something about the way she watched the windows while I spoke, like she was waiting for someone to knock. It became a routine, clean tables, pour coffee, check the clock. But every night, just before 3, the air would change. The neon outside would flicker. The jukebox, the one she told me never to touch, would let out a faint static hum, almost like a voice. I asked her once why we couldn't play it. She just said, "It doesn't like being woken up." I laughed again, but quieter this time. 2 weeks later, Dean started working the grill. He was loud, careless, always humming some country song off-key. Marlene didn't like him, said he didn't respect the rules. I didn't understand what that meant until the night he decided to prove her wrong. It was a Friday. Midnight crowd was gone, sky black and endless. Dean was bored, whistling, and he said, "Let's hear what this old jukebox has got, huh?" Marlene shouted from the office, "Don't you touch it!" But Dean just grinned, tossed me a wink, and pressed one of the dusty chrome buttons. For a second, nothing happened. Then the lights flickered, once, twice, and every bulb in the diner buzzed like they were full of flies. A slow, broken melody began to play, but it wasn't music. It was voices, low, layered, whispering through static. Dean frowned, hit the side of the machine, and then he screamed. It was fast. A blink. One moment he was there, the next he wasn't. Just a smell, like burnt copper, and his spatula clattering to the floor. Marlene came running. She didn't look surprised, just tired. She reached behind the counter, tore down the list of rules, and taped up a new one. Same handwriting, same red ink, but now there was a fresh line at the bottom. Don't talk about Dean. That was the night I stopped laughing. And the night I realized the rules weren't a joke, they were a warning. I didn't quit after Dean vanished. I should have. I told myself I would. But by sunrise, Marlene had convinced me that I'd imagined the whole thing. She said he'd walked out, said he'd been a drifter, unreliable. She even showed me the time card, already punched out at 2:57 a.m. Her voice was calm, steady, motherly in that way that makes you doubt your own memory. Still, I kept hearing it, that static hum, those whispers from the jukebox that didn't sound like music. The next night, Marlene didn't speak about Dean. She just pointed at the new list of rules taped to the wall and made me read number 4 out loud. Don't touch the jukebox, ever. She waited until I repeated it twice. Then she said, "You follow that, you'll stay alive in this place. Alive, not safe, not fine. Alive." That word clung to me like the smell of burnt grease on my clothes. The desert outside was a black ocean that night. The diner's neon sign flickered through the windows, painting the booths in red and white pulses like a heartbeat. I was cleaning tables when I saw movement outside. Something tall standing near the gas pumps, just far enough that I couldn't make out the face. I blinked, and it was gone. Marlene said it's just the heat. But it was midnight. No heat shimmer moves like that. At 1:30 a.m., a patrol car pulled into the lot. Sheriff Lowell, broad shoulders, mustache, too friendly smile. He'd been coming by every few nights since I started, ordering pie and coffee, never finishing either. That night, he didn't sit. He just leaned on the counter and said quietly, "Heard Dean's gone missing." My stomach twisted. "You heard?" He shrugged. "Folks talk. Marlene says he quit. She's lying." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Lowell's eyes didn't blink for a long time. Then he smiled again, too wide. "You'd best forget what you think you saw. Dean was a troublemaker. Places like this don't need trouble." He dropped a few crumpled bills on the counter and left. His headlights disappeared into the desert, leaving me staring at the money. The bills were damp, with something dark that wasn't coffee. I didn't tell Marlene. After that, nights blurred together. Sleep didn't come easy anymore. Sometimes I'd close my eyes in the staff room and wake up standing behind the counter, staring at the empty stool where Dean used to sit. Sometimes the jukebox whispered, even when it wasn't plugged in. But what really broke me was the note. It showed up on my third week, folded neatly beside the coffee pot. The handwriting was the same red marker from the rules list. No greeting, no signature, just one sentence. You forgot to lock the back door. My heart jumped. I checked. The door was locked. Always was. Still, I slid the bolt again and stood there, listening. The desert was silent. No crickets, no wind. Just silence so thick it felt like it had weight. When I turned around, Marlene was standing right behind me. "Don't let them smell your fear," she said. Her eyes were glassy, distant. For the first time, I noticed the way her hands trembled, like someone who'd been awake for years. That night, she made me clean the grease traps out back. I told her I didn't want to go alone, but she said it was part of the job, so I went. The desert air was freezing, the kind that bites through your skin. I kept the back door propped open with a brick, flashlight trembling in my hand. The smell hit first. Not rot, not exactly, but something wet, like rain on hot metal. Then I saw it, footprints in the dust, leading away from the diner into the dark. Bare feet. Each step sunk deep, like whoever it was weighed far too much to be human. I wanted to call out, but then I remembered rule number 5. Never go out back alone. I backed inside slowly, pushing the door shut. The brick scraped against the floor, and then from the other side of the door came a sound. A single tap, then another, then a low, dragging scrape like fingernails across metal. I locked the door and ran. When I told Marlene, she didn't react. She just said, "Then you've seen them now." Seen what? Her lips twitched into something like a smile. The ones who enforce the rules. I couldn't sleep after that. I started writing everything down, even this. Every sound, every face, every shift of light. But things kept changing in my notes, like someone else was writing over me. One entry just read, "Rule number 4 was broken again." I didn't write that. 3 nights later, the jukebox came on by itself. The lights dimmed, that same whispering static filling the diner. Marlene was nowhere to be found. I unplugged the machine, but the sound kept going. Louder now, voices layering, crying, calling my name. Then, just as suddenly, silence. I turned around, and Sheriff Lowell was standing in the doorway. "Late night for you," he said, smiling. His boots were coated in dust, and something dark. He looked at the unplugged jukebox, then at me. "You didn't touch it, did you?" I shook my head, but he didn't believe me. He walked up, leaned close enough that I could smell earth and copper on his jacket, and whispered, "Next time it sings, don't pretend you can't hear it." He left without another word. When I looked back at the rules, there was a new smudge of red under number 4, like something had been added, then wiped away. I thought it said, "If the jukebox speaks your name, it already knows your face." That was the moment I decided to leave. But I didn't realize until later that the desert doesn't let anyone really leave. You ever hear a clock stop ticking? It's not quiet, it's wrong. Like your brain keeps listening for the sound, and when it isn't there, everything else feels louder. That's how the diner felt after that night. The hum of the lights, the buzzing fridge, the scrape of my own heartbeat in my ears. All louder, all wrong. I tried to leave, packed my bag, keys in hand, stood in the doorway at 2:50 a.m. Then the bell above the door jingled, and Marlene's voice came from behind me. "You can't go during service hours." I turned around. She was smiling, too wide, eyes bloodshot. The customers expect consistency. Customers, I said. There's no one here. She looked past me through the window. Not yet. That's when I saw it. The clock on the wall, the one that always buzzed faintly. The second hand froze at 3:13 a.m. and the bell jingled again. He was already sitting at the counter when I turned back. A man in a grey suit, no dust on his shoes, no shadow under his stool. His face was forgettable somehow. I'd describe it, but it slides out of memory every time I try. He didn't look at me, just folded his hands and said, "Black coffee." I froze. Rule number 2. Never serve black coffee after 3 a.m. My mouth went dry. "We're out," he smiled, a slow stretch of his lips that didn't touch his eyes. "You're not." Marlene was nowhere. The kitchen door was open, lights off. Just that low hum from the freezer. I swear I could see movement in the dark back there. Shapes, slow and crawling. I said again, louder, "We're out." The man tilted his head. His voice was calm, soft. "Then pour what's left." And without meaning to, my hand reached for the pot. I poured. The coffee came out thick, too dark, steaming like it was alive. The smell wasn't coffee, it was like rusted metal and rain. I blinked, and for half a second, I saw a reflection in the liquid. My own face, but smiling when I wasn't. He picked up the cup, didn't drink, just touched the rim with his fingertips. Then he said, almost kindly, "You broke it. I didn't." Rule number 2, he whispered. "You broke it," and then he vanished. Not like Dean, not fast. He just faded, like a film reel burning in slow motion. The stool was still turning when he was gone. I ran to the door, tried to yank it open, but the handle burned my hand, metal too hot to touch. Outside, the neon sign was flickering. Marlene's diner flashing between red and white so fast it looked like blood pulsing. Then I heard her voice. "Back here, Cass." I didn't remember telling her my name. She was standing in the kitchen, hands clasped. On the counter in front of her sat the empty coffee cup. Steam still rose from it. "You served him," she said. "I didn't mean to." Her smile faded. "They don't care what you meant. They'll come for payment." My throat tightened. "Who's they?" "The ones who built this place. The ones who feed through it." I backed away. "You're insane," she sighed, almost sad. "That's what Dean said." That's when the jukebox started again. Soft static, then a low moan threaded through the white noise. The lights dimmed. The air grew heavy, thick, like syrup in my lungs. Marlene grabbed my arm. "Listen to me. If he comes back, you tell him you understand. Say you'll serve him again. Otherwise, they'll take you out back." "Out back?" But she didn't answer. She just let go and walked straight into the freezer, closing the door behind her. The hum grew louder until it drowned everything. I don't remember how long I stood there. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. When I came to, the freezer door was open. Empty, frost forming on the floor like handprints. And the clock said 3:13 again. He was back. Same stool, same suit, same stillness. This time he smiled wider. "I knew you'd learn." My voice trembled. "I understand," he nodded. "Good." Then he slid something across the counter, a folded napkin. "For you." I didn't want to open it, but I did. Inside, in that same red ink as the diner rules, were 3 words. "Tell them to come." When I looked up, he was gone again. I turned toward the kitchen and froze. Every rule sheet on the wall was gone. In their place was a single new one, written freshly, still dripping red. "Keep the coffee hot." 2. "Don't stop serving." 3. "Tell them to come." 4. 3:13 means always. I didn't sleep after that. Didn't eat. Just waited for sunrise that never came. By 7 a.m., the world outside the window still looked dark, like the sun forgot us. My reflection in the glass didn't move when I did. It just smiled. Then the bell jingled again. Not once, but twice. 2 customers this time, both of them wearing grey suits. That's when I realised the diner wasn't a place. It was a loop, a ritual, and I wasn't the victim anymore. I was becoming part of it. I told myself I'd stay one more night, just to make sense of it. But part of me knew even then, the next time the clock hit 3:13, it wouldn't stop. To be continued in Chapter 4, the graveyard behind the grill. I didn't plan to go out back again. Not after the footprints, not after the whispers, but after the 3:13 customers appeared. Something changed in the diner. The air was heavier, the lights flickered more often, and Marlene, if she was even real anymore, stopped coming out of the freezer. Sometimes, when the hum got too loud, I could still hear her voice from inside it, whispering a prayer that sounded more like an apology. For the first time since I started working there, the closed sign stayed flipped to open even after sunrise. Not that it mattered. The desert outside never got light again. I stopped checking the clock. It always said 3:13. That night, or maybe morning, I don't know anymore, I heard a noise behind the grill, a dragging, hollow scrape, like someone pulling a shovel through gravel. I should have ignored it, should have pretended I didn't hear. But there's a point where fear turns into curiosity, the kind that eats at you from the inside out. I grabbed a flashlight and went behind the counter. The tile was cracked, wet with something dark that glistened like oil. The smell hit next, metallic, familiar, and wrong. There was a trap door I'd never noticed before, tucked behind the fryer, a small rusted latch that looked freshly used. My hands were shaking as I pulled it open. A cold draft rose from below, and with it, the sound of flies. The tunnel beneath was narrow, built from concrete and old wood. My flashlight beam cut through the dust, catching glimpses of scratches on the walls. They weren't words, but more like tally marks, hundreds of them. Halfway down, I saw something carved deeper than the rest. A name, Dean. The air grew colder. My breath fogged in front of me. At the end of the tunnel was a small room lit by a single swinging bulb. I thought it was storage at first, until I saw what filled the shelves. Coffee cups, dozens, maybe hundreds, all stained black inside, as if whatever had been poured into them had never cooled. And on the floor, bones, human bones, mixed with cracked plates and old uniforms. Then I saw the sign on the far wall, a wooden board painted in that same red handwriting. The ones who serve become the served. That's when I heard boots on the floor above me, slow, deliberate. The diner bell jingled. I turned off my flashlight and crouched low. Someone, or something, was moving behind the grill. I could see their shadow through the cracks in the trap door. Broad shoulders, slow movements. It wasn't Marlene, and it wasn't a customer. Then a voice drifted down, calm, deep, and too close. "You shouldn't be down there, Cass. Sheriff Lowell." He knelt by the trap door, peering through the slit of light. I held my breath. He smiled. "I told Marlene you'd figure it out. You're the curious kind, always have been." My pulse hammered. "What is this place?" He chuckled. "It's not a place. It's a promise." He lifted something, the coffee pot. Steam rolled off it, thick and dark. Every town along this highway has one. They feed it so the road stays quiet, so the desert doesn't wake up. I swallowed hard. "Feed what?" He tilted the pot, letting a drop fall through the cracks. It hissed when it hit the dirt, smoking like acid. "The thing under the diner," he said softly. "The thing that owns the rules." Then he closed the trap door and locked it. I screamed until my throat bled, pounding on the wood. No answer. The bulb flickered overhead, buzzing louder, shaking like it wanted to fall. And then I heard it. A slow inhale from the darkness behind me, like something breathing in my fear. When I turned, I saw movement, shadows shifting along the walls, stretching, reaching. Then from the corner, a face leaned into the light. Dean. His eyes were gone. His mouth was open too wide, he whispered, voice breaking like static. You broke the rule. I stumbled backward, tripping over bones. More shapes crawled from the shadows. Grey hands, pale faces, all whispering the same thing. You broke it. You broke it. You broke it! I ran, climbed the shelves, slammed my shoulder against the trapdoor until the latch snapped. I pulled myself up, gasping, shaking. The diner was empty. The lights were dead. Only the jukebox glowed, humming softly. It started playing by itself. That same static-filled melody. And behind the music, I could hear her. Marlene, it's too late, Cass. You can't leave now. You fed it. The floorboards beneath me groaned. A crack split across the tile. Something was moving under the grill. Something huge. The air turned hot. The smell of burning metal filled my lungs. I ran for the door, but the neon sign outside was melting, dripping down the glass. The jukebox screamed, and then silence. When I woke, it was daylight. The diner looked normal again. Counters white, floors clean, rules list on the wall. Only this time the handwriting was mine. I don't remember writing it. I don't remember anything after the light. But at the bottom of the list, under all the old rules, there was a new one, written fresh. Ink still wet. 6. Don't dig behind the grill, ever. That's when I understood. I hadn't escaped, I'd inherited. If you're watching this, then you've probably already been there. Maybe you stopped for gas, maybe you needed coffee. Maybe you thought you saw a diner glowing on the horizon where there shouldn't be one. That's how it starts. It's always how it starts. I set this camera up in the storeroom. The hum you hear in the background, that's the freezer. I can't turn it off anymore. It hums even when it's unplugged. I think it's breathing now. I know how crazy that sounds. I do. But before you scroll away, just listen. My name isn't Cass. Not really. I told you that name because it felt safer, cleaner, like something that could still be saved. My real name doesn't matter anymore. The diner took it. It takes everything eventually. When I first started recording this, I thought it'd be a confession. Proof. Something the cops could find. But I don't think there are cops anymore. Not outside the diner. Not outside the desert. I think the road loops now. Every time a car passes by, the headlights fade before they reach the next town. It's just the highway, the sand and me, and the rules. They're still taped behind the counter. Same red marker, same shaky handwriting. Only difference is, now they change on their own. Sometimes I wake up to find new ones. Last night, rule number 1 said, keep smiling for the guests. And there's a mirror now, one that wasn't there before, hanging right above the coffee machine. If I look at it too long, the reflection starts lagging, like an old film reel skipping frames. Sometimes my reflection talks first. It always says the same thing. Coffee's ready. I know what you're thinking. Why not leave? Burn it down. Run, I tried. God, I tried. I drove for 6 hours straight one morning. Didn't even look back. But every time I blinked, the road stretched longer. The sun stayed frozen in the same place. Eventually, the neon sign appeared again in my rearview mirror. Marlene's Diner. Open 24 hours. That's when I realized the diner isn't in Arizona. It's under it, like a root system, buried and breathing, pulling in whoever it needs to keep itself alive. I think that's what happened to Marlene. And Dean, maybe the sheriff too. They weren't killed. They were absorbed, and now it's my turn. I don't sleep anymore. Not because I'm scared, but because I can hear the whispers if I do, they sound like orders being taken, coffee being poured, doors opening. But sometimes through the static, I hear laughter. Mine. I used to think I was an employee. Now I think I'm the product. Every night around 3:13, the diner fills up again. The bell jingles 1, 2, 10 times. People, or things that look like people, sit at the counter. They always order the same thing, black coffee, and I pour it. Because that's my job now. They talk to me, though not with words. It's like their voices bypass my ears and crawl straight into my head. Sometimes they ask about the road, about the next one. Sometimes they whisper about you. Yeah, you. Whoever's watching this. I don't know how the signal's getting out, but somehow when I hit upload, the camera light blinks red and the jukebox stops humming, like it's listening. So maybe this is what it wants. Maybe this video is the real trap. Maybe the diner feeds through attention. Every view, every comment, every person who wants to believe. Maybe that's what keeps it alive. If you've watched this far, if you've seen my face and heard my voice, then I need you to do one thing for me. Don't come here. Don't look for it. Don't try to prove it's real, because the moment you start searching, the diner starts searching for you. Last night, the rules changed again. There's only one now, written big across the wall in dripping red ink. Welcome the new hire. I didn't understand at first. Then I heard the bell. A car pulled up outside just before dawn. A beat-up sedan, trunk full of suitcases. A young woman stepped out, rubbing her eyes, looking at the neon sign like it was salvation, just like I did. She pushed open the door and smiled nervously. "Hey, are you hiring?" And before I could stop myself, before I could even think, I heard the words leave my mouth. Calm, automatic, rehearsed. "Sure thing, sweetheart. Follow the rules and you'll do fine." I watched her walk behind the counter. The jukebox clicked on. The lights flickered. Somewhere deep under the grill, something groaned awake, and I realized I wasn't the prisoner anymore. I was the gatekeeper. The diner doesn't kill you. It just replaces you. That's the secret Marlene never told me. That's the truth I've been hiding this whole time. Because I didn't run away from the diner. I became it. If you're ever driving through Arizona and you see a neon sign on an empty highway, don't stop. Even if you're hungry. Even if you're lost. And especially if the sign says, open 24 hours. Because if you come in, I'll be here, smiling behind the counter, pouring coffee that's too dark to see through, asking if you'd like a refill. Story number 3. They said it was just pressure, that the sound, the screaming, was metal bending miles under. But metal doesn't cry in human voices, does it? Not after you've buried something alive down there. Camera flickers. Narrator's eyes dart off screen, tone uneven, half regret, half denial. I wasn't supposed to tell anyone, but the ocean remembers everything, and it's been calling my name. You ever hear something you can't explain, and for a second, you're not sure if it came from outside, or from inside your own head? That's how I start the video, eyes locked on the lens, breath uneven. The tiny red light on my camera flickers like it's nervous too. Behind me, the room is almost pitch black except for the hum of my old computer. I've been recording for hours, deleting most of it, trying to find a way to start without sounding insane. But there's no sane way to talk about what we did 3 miles below the Atlantic. It wasn't supposed to be dangerous. We were scientists, not explorers. The project, D9 Borehole, was meant to test deep-sea drilling tech that could reach places oil rigs never could. I was the chief engineer, responsible for the control systems and sensors. We drilled into basalt, salt domes, volcanic ridges, but nothing like that trench. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge was different, like drilling into the planet's spine. There were 6 of us on board the Mirren station, a modular sea lab tethered above the drill site. The ocean outside our portholes was absolute black, thick as tar, and if you turned off the lights, the darkness felt alive. That's not a metaphor, I mean it moved, like it had weight. Captain Rena Holt, our mission lead, used to joke that we were floating on top of a sleeping god. We laughed the first time she said it. We didn't laugh later. I can still remember the first time I heard it. We'd been drilling for almost 70 hours without incident. Rena was running diagnostics on the stabilizers, muttering about pressure differentials, when the comms started to buzz, like interference, a sharp metallic hum that kept rising and falling, almost like breathing. I remember saying, "That's just feedback from the drill." But the way she looked at me, she wasn't buying it. Then came the sound. It wasn't loud at first, more like a vibration in the walls, something you felt before you heard. Everyone froze. The hum deepened, stretching, warping, until it almost resembled a voice, not quite human, not animal. It was too layered, like hundreds of throats trying to speak through each other. And then it screamed. I flinch even now, remembering it. You don't forget a sound like that. It crawls under your skin and stays there. The instruments went wild, readings spiking off the charts. I swear the entire station shook, though later Rayner insisted there was no seismic activity. We checked every system. No malfunctions, no pressure leaks, nothing. Just that scream. Rena wanted to surface, report an anomaly, but I stopped her. I told her it was just geological, pressure echoing through fault lines. "We're engineers, not ghost hunters," I said. She glared at me, but agreed to keep recording. We were being monitored by corporate HQ, and the last thing I needed was to sound superstitious on an open channel. The truth is, I knew something was wrong. The data didn't match any known pattern. Whatever caused that sound wasn't mechanical. I kept analyzing the frequency, trying to isolate it, and the more I listened, the more it changed. It started low, like a whale song, but every few seconds, I could swear it shifted pitch, forming shapes. Words, maybe. I wrote one down in my logbook. Let go. Rena caught me doing it and told me to get some sleep. "You're hearing what you want to hear," she said. Maybe she was right. I hadn't slept in 2 days, but that night, when the others turned in, I stayed awake, replaying the sound over and over. Each time it seemed closer. Around 0300 hours, I went back to the control deck alone. The room was cold, condensation running down the steel walls like sweat. The drill system was on standby, but the monitors flickered faintly, lines of static twitching across the feed. I leaned closer, and for a split second, I swear on my life, I saw something on the sonar. A shape. It wasn't a rock formation. It moved. I should have reported it. I didn't. I just stood there, staring at the shifting blur, my hand trembling over the controls. Rena's voice came through the comm, half asleep, asking what I was doing. I told her I was checking calibrations. That was a lie. I was overriding the safety lock. We weren't supposed to drill deeper than the 5th layer, not without authorization. But the readings were impossible. The chamber beneath us was hollow, like a cavity inside the crust. Every instinct told me not to touch it. Curiosity told me otherwise. The override key turned smoother than I expected. The machine shuddered, and the drill roared to life. The sound echoed through the hull, and for a moment I felt proud. Then I heard it again. The scream. Only this time, it didn't come from the speakers. It came from beneath us. The walls shook, alarms blaring, pressure gauges spiking. I hit the emergency stop, but the system lagged by several seconds, long enough for the entire deck to shiver like something massive had pushed back from below. I remember Rena bursting into the room, shouting my name, and the look on her face when she heard it too. That scream, it wasn't sound anymore. It was vibration, light, memory. It filled every part of me, like it was inside my bones. When it finally stopped, the silence was worse. Rena grabbed my collar, demanding what I'd done, but I couldn't speak. Not because I was scared, because I was listening. The metal was still humming, not randomly, in rhythm, like a heartbeat. I ended the video there. I didn't tell them everything. Not yet. He leans toward the camera, voice barely above a whisper. The first scream came right after I hit the override. The others thought it was the ocean. I knew better. When we looked down the borehole the next morning, the water wasn't blue anymore. It was black, like the ocean had curdled overnight. That's how I began my second recording, even though I'd promised myself not to film again. The company had ordered silence, the kind that comes with legal contracts and veiled threats. But after what we saw, silence wasn't possible. Rena didn't talk to me that morning. She just stood over the glass viewport, her reflection rippling across that ink-dark water. We were supposed to continue operations after running diagnostics, but she had already suspended the drill. Said something about unexplained density fluctuations and biological interference. I could tell she didn't believe her own words. Nobody did. The ocean beneath us wasn't just dark, it was wrong. The cameras showed a depth anomaly. The sonar pinged back distorted readings, like the water was absorbing sound instead of reflecting it. When I asked Rena if she'd reviewed the overnight feed, she shook her head. "The data's corrupted," she said. But later, when I accessed the storage manually, I saw the truth. There was footage. Just 1 minute of it survived. At first, it looked like a simple descent video, our remote probe lowering through murky layers. Then, at the 42-second mark, something brushed the lens. A smear of motion, soft and wide, like cloth moving underwater. Except it wasn't fabric, it pulsed. The probe's lights flickered, and for a fraction of a second, the screen filled with an eye. A lidless, grey-white mass with veins that seemed to breathe. Then static. I didn't show Rena that part. By afternoon, the water had started to bubble around the borehole. We took samples, if you can call it that. The substance clinging to the nets wasn't liquid anymore. It moved sluggishly like it was alive. Rena burned it immediately. That was her instinct. To destroy what we didn't understand. Mine was to study it. "You're not listening to it," I told her. "What the hell does that mean?" she snapped, eyes bloodshot. "It's resonating, like it's responding." Rena slammed the datapad onto the console. "You want to believe in ghosts, Eli? Fine. But don't drag science into your guilt." That word, guilt, cut deeper than she meant. She didn't know what I'd done. Not really. She thought I'd just broken protocol. She didn't know I'd kept drilling for a full 8 seconds after the emergency lockout failed. 8 seconds was enough. Later, when she went to the comms bay, I went back to the control deck. The black water was still swirling below, catching faint reflections from our floodlights. I thought I saw shapes moving just beneath the surface. Figures, maybe, or shadows. But the moment I blinked, they were gone. Then the alarm started again. Pressure spikes, electrical interference, the kind of readings you only get when something massive moves near the hull. I heard the low-frequency hum return, the one from before. But this time, there was no mistaking it. It was rhythmic, like breathing, like waiting. Rena burst through the door, shouting at me to cut the systems. But the controls were frozen. The screens flickered with static. And through the distortion, a word appeared on the monitor. 4 letters. scrolling across the diagnostics feed in red. Down. Rena swore, grabbed the override lever, and pulled. Everything went dark. For a few seconds we sat in silence, lit only by the emergency lights. You could hear the hull creaking, groaning like it was being twisted by invisible hands. Then came the knock. 1, 2, 3. Slow, deliberate. From underneath us, Rena and I stared at each other, neither breathing. The sound came again, closer. I wanted to believe it was just pressure echoing through the borehole, but it wasn't random. It had pattern, interval, intention. Like something was trying to answer us. I remember whispering, "Maybe it's the drill head shifting," even though I didn't believe it. Rena didn't respond. She was pale, shaking, staring out the viewport. I followed her gaze. The black water was rising, not fast, but steady. Thick waves crawling up through the borehole, inching toward the surface deck. I could smell it before it reached us. Salt and rot, something primal. Rena hit the internal alarms. "Seal the compartment!" she yelled into the comms, but the intercom just hissed, full of static and distant, broken whispers. I swear I heard my name in there. We backed away as the first tendrils of that liquid reached the deck, slithering, twitching like it knew we were there. The emergency shutters began to close, but not before I saw it. Inside the water, something was moving. Pale shapes, like faces, pressing against the surface and fading again. When the doors sealed, I could still hear it sloshing against the bulkhead. Rena collapsed into a chair, breathing hard. I was shaking so badly I nearly dropped the tablet. She looked at me and said, "Tell me you didn't touch the override again." I wanted to deny it. I really did. But before I could answer, the lights flickered, and through the floor we heard it. The scream again, fainter this time, like it was buried in the water itself. That's when Rena said the words I'll never forget. "Eli, I don't think it's trying to escape. I think it's trying to reach us." I didn't respond. I couldn't, because I was still hearing that rhythmic pulse through the walls. Soft, steady, unmistakable. It wasn't the ocean anymore. It was a heartbeat, and this time it was syncing with mine. The screen glitches. A faint ripple of static mimics a pulse. Then, darkness. When we looked down the borehole the next morning, the water wasn't blue anymore. It was black, like the ocean had curdled overnight. That's how I began my second recording, even though I'd promised myself not to film again. The company had ordered silence, the kind that comes with legal contracts and veiled threats. But after what we saw, silence wasn't possible. Rena didn't talk to me that morning. She just stood over the glass viewport, her reflection rippling across that ink-dark water. We were supposed to continue operations after running diagnostics, but she had already suspended the drill, said something about unexplained density fluctuations and biological interference. I could tell she didn't believe her own words. Nobody did. The ocean beneath us wasn't just dark, it was wrong. The cameras showed a depth anomaly. The sonar pinged back distorted readings, like the water was absorbing sound instead of reflecting it. When I asked Rena if she'd reviewed the overnight feed, she shook her head. "The data's corrupted," she said, but later, when I accessed the storage manually, I saw the truth. There was footage. Just 1 minute of it survived. At first, it looked like a simple descent video, our remote probe lowering through murky layers. Then, at the 42-second mark, something brushed the lens. A smear of motion, soft and wide, like cloth moving underwater. Except it wasn't fabric, it pulsed. The probe's lights flickered, and for a fraction of a second, the screen filled with an eye. A lidless, grey-white mass with veins that seemed to breathe. Then static. I didn't show Rena that part. By afternoon, the water had started to bubble around the borehole. We took samples, if you can call it that. The substance clinging to the nets wasn't liquid anymore. It moved sluggishly like it was alive. Rena burned it immediately. That was her instinct. To destroy what we didn't understand. Mine was to study it. You're not listening to it, I told her. What the hell does that mean? She snapped, eyes bloodshot. It's resonating, like it's responding. Rena slammed the data pad onto the console. You want to believe in ghosts, Eli? Fine. But don't drag science into your guilt. That word, guilt, cut deeper than she meant. She didn't know what I'd done. Not really. She thought I'd just broken protocol. She didn't know I'd kept drilling for a full 8 seconds after the emergency lockout failed. 8 seconds was enough. Later, when she went to the comms bay, I went back to the control deck. The black water was still swirling below, catching faint reflections from our floodlights. I thought I saw shapes moving just beneath the surface. Figures maybe, or shadows. But the moment I blinked, they were gone. Then the alarm started again. Pressure spikes. Electrical interference, the kind of readings you only get when something massive moves near the hull. I heard the low-frequency hum return, the one from before, but this time there was no mistaking it. It was rhythmic, like breathing, like waiting. Rena burst through the door, shouting at me to cut the systems, but the controls were frozen. The screens flickered with static, and through the distortion, a word appeared on the monitor, 4 letters, scrolling across the diagnostics feed in red, down. Rena swore, grabbed the override lever, and pulled. Everything went dark. For a few seconds we sat in silence, lit only by the emergency lights. You could hear the hull creaking, groaning like it was being twisted by invisible hands. Then came the knock. 1, 2, 3. Slow, deliberate. From underneath us, Rena and I stared at each other, neither breathing. The sound came again, closer. I wanted to believe it was just pressure echoing through the borehole, but it wasn't random. It had pattern, interval, intention. Like something was trying to answer us. I remember whispering, "Maybe it's the drill head shifting," even though I didn't believe it. Rena didn't respond. She was pale, shaking, staring out the viewport. I followed her gaze. The black water was rising, not fast, but steady. Thick waves crawling up through the borehole, inching toward the surface deck. I could smell it before it reached us. Salt and rot, something primal. Rena hit the internal alarms. "Seal the compartment!" she yelled into the comms, but the intercom just hissed, full of static and distant, broken whispers. I swear I heard my name in there. We backed away as the first tendrils of that liquid reached the deck, slithering, twitching like it knew we were there. The emergency shutters began to close, but not before I saw it. Inside the water, something was moving. Pale shapes, like faces, pressing against the surface and fading again. When the doors sealed, I could still hear it sloshing against the bulkhead. Rena collapsed into a chair, breathing hard. I was shaking so badly I nearly dropped the tablet. She looked at me and said, "Tell me you didn't touch the override again." I wanted to deny it. I really did. But before I could answer, the lights flickered, and through the floor we heard it. The scream again, fainter this time, like it was buried in the water itself. That's when Rena said the words I'll never forget. "Eli, I don't think it's trying to escape. I think it's trying to reach us." I didn't respond. I couldn't, because I was still hearing that rhythmic pulse through the walls. Soft, steady, unmistakable. It wasn't the ocean anymore. It was a heartbeat, and this time it was syncing with mine. "Not again," I muttered, more to convince myself than anything. "You're just tired. You're just hearing things." But the rules had stopped being suggestions days ago. Every time I broke one, something answered. By the time I reached the observation deck, the wind had become a scream. The beacon's light kept flickering on and off, fighting to stay alive. I tried to focus on the machinery, tightening bolts, checking wires, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every time the light flashed, I caught glimpses of movement outside. Not people, shapes, dozens of them, swaying in the fog below. When the beam hit the shoreline, I saw her, Anna. Her hair clung to her face, soaked through, eyes dark as ink. She was standing knee-deep in the surf, her white dress plastered against her body, the fabric rippling like seaweed. She wasn't moving toward the lighthouse, just staring straight up at me. "No," I whispered. "You're not real." The radio behind me crackled to life. "Evan, help me." I stumbled backward, knocking over the chair. The rule sheet flashed in my head. Never speak to voices from the fog. But she wasn't in the fog now. She was standing in the light. I should have turned away. Should have cut the power and locked the door. Instead, I grabbed the microphone. "Anna?" Static hissed like laughter. "You left me there." "I didn't." My voice cracked. "It was an accident. You slipped." The storm roared in answer, and the radio screamed with it. Voices layered over one another. Hers, mine, others I didn't recognize. All saying the same thing. "Let me in." The light flickered again, then died completely. Everything went dark. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, pressed against my skin. Then the smell hit me. Salt, rot, and something sweet, like decayed flowers. I could feel water pooling around my boots, but the floor wasn't flooding. The water was seeping from the walls. I stumbled down the stairs, tripping on the last step and landing hard. The flashlight cracked but stayed lit, its beam slicing across the room and stopping on the rule sheet, pinned to the wall by a knife I didn't remember owning. The paper trembled with each gust of wind coming from the open window above it. Someone, or something, had written across the rules in dripping ink. "Light it early." My breath caught. That wasn't a warning. It was a demand. I grabbed the oil can and raced back up. Every step groaned under my weight, the metal railing slick with condensation. When I reached the beacon chamber, the air felt alive. Thick, electric, vibrating through my bones. The lens loomed over me, glass streaked with salt, turning black in the absence of light. "Come on," I muttered, fumbling with the matches. My hands wouldn't stay steady. "Work, damn it, work!" The first spark died, the second caught. As the flame roared to life, the fog outside pulsed like a living thing. For a moment, I thought the light had cleared it, but then the beam swung out over the water and I saw them. Not one, not a dozen, hundreds. Figures standing just below the surface, their heads tilted up toward the lighthouse. Faces pale, mouths open, not screaming, breathing. The light hit Anna again. Her face was closer now. She'd moved up the rocks, her hand pressed against the glass of the lower window. The beam illuminated her eyes. Empty sockets, water spilling down her cheeks like tears. The glass fogged. A handprint appeared from the other side. "Evan," the voice came again. Softer now, almost tender. "You lit it too early." The flame inside the beacon surged, then dimmed. The entire tower shuddered, metal shrieking under pressure. I backed away, tripping over the stairwell edge, catching myself just before I fell. The reflection in the beacon glass shifted, and it wasn't Anna anymore. It was me. but the reflection smiled. The light flared again, so bright I couldn't see. I covered my face, and when the glow finally dimmed, the room was empty. The window was closed. No footprints, no handprints, just silence. I sank to the floor, gasping, shaking, whispering to myself, "You imagined her. She's gone. She's gone." Then I heard it. Faint, rhythmic tapping from the logbook downstairs. I moved like I was sleepwalking, down the spiral steps, every nerve burning. The logbook lay open, the pen standing upright on its own. It began to move, slowly. You can't leave yet. The pages flipped by themselves, faster and faster, the sound like wings beating. The candlelight dimmed, and the wind howled through the cracks, carrying her voice, closer this time, warm and wet against my ear. The sea remembers. Evan, it always remembers. I looked down, and the ink on the logbook was still wet, but it wasn't red this time. It was black, thick, and dripping off the edges of the page. I followed the trail with my eyes, down my arm, across my wrist, to where it was bleeding. Not a cut, a mark, the shape of a hand. Outside, the storm stopped. The sea went dead still. The light from the beacon swept one last time over the water, and in that light, I saw her again, standing at the door of the lighthouse, smiling, knocking. When I opened my eyes, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't mean peace. It means something is waiting. The storm was gone. The sun filtered weakly through the tower's glass, pale and thin, like it didn't want to be here either. I was lying on the floor beside the beacon, my clothes still damp, my hands crusted with black residue. The air reeked of burnt oil and salt. For a few seconds, I couldn't remember how I'd gotten there. Then I saw the door. It was open, only a few inches, but enough to feel the cold air creeping in, bringing with it the scent of seaweed and rot. I froze. The rules replayed in my mind like a recording I couldn't turn off. Do not open the door after midnight, no matter who knocks. But the sun was up now. It wasn't midnight anymore, so why did it still feel wrong? I staggered to my feet and pushed the door shut. The hinges screamed. My fingers brushed the surface and I felt moisture. Not rain, something thicker. When I looked, there was a faint handprint. Small, feminine. Anna. The name escaped me before I could stop it. It felt like the room tightened when I said it, like the air itself didn't approve. I turned toward the stairs. The logbook lay where I'd left it, still open, the ink dried to a dull sheen. But something had written another line beneath my last entry. Light it again before dusk. I stared at it, heart pounding. The handwriting was mine. I told myself I must have written it half asleep during the storm, but I knew that was a lie. I'd seen my reflection smiling when I wasn't. That thing, whatever it was, it had my hands, my face, my voice. I spent the rest of the morning checking the generator, polishing the lens, pretending everything was normal. But every sound echoed too long. Every reflection moved half a second late. Once, when I caught my reflection in the metal railing, I swear it blinked after I did. By noon, the sky had turned that pale grey blue that means the day is dying early. I brewed coffee just to keep my hands busy, but it tasted like seawater. When I set the mug down, I noticed something glinting near the window. A small silver chain tangled in the sill. Anna's necklace, the one I'd given her. I hadn't seen it since that night on the dock, the night she fell. My pulse quickened. I didn't pick it up. I couldn't, because if I did, I'd have to admit she'd been here, that she wasn't just in my head, that maybe she never left. The wind picked up again, low and steady, and the walls began to hum. I went outside to clear my thoughts, stepping carefully onto the slick rocks. The sea was glass, flat, calm, too calm. Not even the gulls were out. I looked toward the horizon. The ferry should have come by now. It was Saturday, supply day, but the water was empty. Then faintly through the fog I saw a shape. Not a boat, a person. They were walking along the shallows, slowly, deliberately, the same way Anna had the night before. I wanted to shout, but my voice wouldn't work. My throat felt full of salt. The figure stopped, turned toward me and raised a hand in greeting or warning. I ran. By the time I reached the lighthouse door, it was already ajar again. I slammed it shut and locked it, chest heaving. My reflection in the glass of the porthole window was smiling again. "You let her in," it whispered. I stumbled back. No, I didn't. You left it open long enough." The lights flickered. The air grew colder. The beacon above began to turn on its own, though I hadn't started it. The gears groaned and spun, flooding the room with light that wasn't white but yellow, sickly, like something burning from the inside. The radio crackled again. "Evan Marsh. This is Coast Guard Station 47. Do you copy?" My heart leapt. I grabbed the receiver. Yes, I'm here. I need help. There's someone." Static swallowed the rest. Then faintly, the voice continued. "But it wasn't the Coast Guard anymore. We tried to reach you before. You shouldn't have come back." Back? The line went dead. The clock struck 6. Dusk. The words in the logbook echoed in my mind. Light it again before dusk. My hands moved on their own, striking the match, feeding the flame. The beacon came alive, spinning faster and faster, the beams slicing through the fog. I stared out the window, praying to see the ferry, any sign of life. But what I saw instead made my blood turn to ice. The water wasn't empty anymore. The figures were back, rows of them, stretching as far as I could see, standing just below the surface. Their faces were clearer now, pale and human, and among them, Anna's. She raised her hand. The necklace glittered around her neck. "You shouldn't have lit it," she whispered through the glass. "You promised you'd stay. You said it was safe. You lied." The beacon flared one last time, so bright it burned through the fog. When it dimmed, the sea was gone. The rocks, the horizon, everything. Just black water stretching forever. I looked down. The rule sheet fluttered at my feet. Only one line was left unmarked. "Do not look directly into the light." And before I could turn away, the beacon spun toward me. It hit me full in the face. And in that blinding brilliance, I finally saw the truth. My reflection wasn't smiling anymore. It was screaming. Then everything went white.